This video will be covering very serious topics. Trigger warning for mentions of pedophilia. Please skip this video if you find this topic harmful. Thank you. Hey guys, before I start, I'd just like to preface the context for why I'm making this video. I hate for this to be the video I return with after my small break. I wish I could just move on and ignore what I've seen, but I would not feel comfortable knowing what I know and not putting it out there for everyone else. I can't sugarcoat it. I have a major problem with not only the people I'll be talking about it, but also the actual morality of posting this. I don't want this to be perceived as just drama content. This goes far beyond that, but the people I will be talking about have shown their inability to grasp this concept. Therefore, I will be taking steps to ensure that only the information I deem completely necessary for this discussion will be released. Should things need to escalate, however, I have no problem posting all of the messages and context that I have. I want to outline the actual purpose of this video to make things abundantly clear. I plan to highlight the odd and alleged harmful actions taken by DIY Arts and the decision of my former friend and associate Detective Uwu to continue to platform her anyway. DIY Arts, who I will be calling DIY for the rest of this video, has been accused of harboring a pedophile in their Discord server. Anybody else who took part in this situation will go unnamed, as I only know what happened from Detective's perspective. It is unfair for me to bring up anyone else that didn't give their full story. However, there are a couple of people who took a main role in this that I don't think can be omitted. I will be censoring their names as I don't know them personally and how they feel about the situation as a whole. I am sorry for getting them involved, but their part in this is important enough to be included. If any of those people recognize their roles in all this, please do not feel offended. This is not a personal attack against you. I'd also like to add that everything I say in this video is all alleged. While all of the information I have is consistent with DIY keeping a predator in her server, I don't have a statement of her blatantly confirming it herself. And as you will see, Detective is not a reliable narrator. However, at no point has Detective said that DIY has ever denied it. He even says that she flat out told them that she kept the predator in there to watch over them. Due to this, it is extremely unlikely that this information is incorrect, but just in case, I would like to add that I personally do not have a confession from her. There are 3 reasons why I feel I have to make this post. Number 1. The public deserves to know the type of people that are in charge of running their Discord servers that children reside in. Number 2. I believe that the people involved in this situation should own up to their mistakes publicly and face actual consequences. Number 3. Detective Wu is a liar and he lied to me about the precautions he was planning on taking to keep people safe. Please do not send anyone I talk about in this video any hate. I do not want to cause more stress than this video will inevitably cause on its own. I have tried to settle this as peacefully as possible privately, as all parties seem to have preferred to have it that way. But it looks like I failed to get my point across, so I'm gonna have to put my money where my mouth is and release all the information I can to the public. That way, at least people know what they're getting into. I feel like it is important to understand my part in all this before we continue. I will be giving a brief explanation of my understanding of events. At the time of writing, my involvement in this situation started around 10 to 11 months ago. During this time, I was still a moderator of Detective Uwu's community server. I am no longer part of that community due to reasons provided shortly. While I was checking in on things, I realized that there was a conversation happening in the mod voice call. I joined to listen in to see how things were going. Detective and his mod friends were talking about a drama that had been unfolding over that past week. What he told me that day was, quote, Mel defended a pedophile and kept her in her server for 2 months after knowing about it. We both disavowed these actions at the time. Without getting into too many details to keep as many people anonymous as possible, she proceeded to backtalk the detective as well as some of his friends and associates. Not long after this event in the Discord server, Detective made a post stating that there was stuff going on behind the scenes, alluding to the situation with DIY. He refused to name her in this post. I do not have a problem with this because this was in service of a general PSA he wanted to do for his server. At this point, if he decided he didn't want to name her or shed any more light on the situation, I would not fault him for it. Because the situation was handled at that point, it wasn't necessary to go public with the culprit of the crime. Should he have gone public, however, I don't think that choice would have been wrong either. Yet after this post, he decided to go on a live stream to address the situation yet again.
I just wanted to go away as quickly as possible. But one of my good friends, who all of you also have been familiar with, basically, long story short, they defended a pedo. And they knew about it for what was like, I believe, 2 months before finally they came under fire and finally banned the pedal from their Discord server. Now, their defense in that case was basically saying that they wanted to keep an eye on the pedal to make sure they didn't do anything wrong after that. But not only do pedals not really deserve a second chance, they're a pedophile. Like, what else do you expect? But what kind of person brings danger closer to them? Especially when kids can be in danger of it. And not only that, but because of like several like my friends and I cutting contact with them off. Yeah, exactly, Ryder, exactly. Just don't add them to your server. Like, seriously. I don't. So basically, yeah. Not only that, but like I was saying, when several of our friends and I cut contact with them, instead of just letting this go, they decide to bash some of us based on our decisions on the matter. It's childish. It really is. And I don't think this person understands. That's a lot. That some of us have been affected this way in our own lives. I really do not think they understand this. Based on their actions that they took, they hurt so many of us. You can call it betrayal because that's essentially what it was. Exactly, they really are. And I don't think this person understands that. They really do not. And like I said earlier, I'm not associating myself with people who are pedos or people who defend pedos. I'm not going to.
This is when I make my position against keeping DIY anonymous in the live chat. Whether he read these messages or not is unclear, but at the very least he was able to see them due to the fact that not many people were chatting at the time. This stream has proved to me that Detective understood the harm that DIY was doing and made an educated decision to cut ties with her. At this point, everyone who knows what she allegedly did understands that she is irresponsible and untrustworthy. So imagine my surprise when, while doing my weekly check-in of Detective's server, I find her there. Now that I have laid out the story up to this point, I can get into what happened when I tried to confront Detective. At first I thought this was a mistake or a joke, but he confirmed it was indeed DIY. When I asked him why, I expected him to tell me that he got the story wrong or that she shouldn't be in there and would be banned. What I was not expecting was for him to come to her defense. Before I start showing more of the DMs between Detective and I would like to apologize for swearing so early on in the discussion. His response was so misguided and I was already very angry at the prospect of her being in there in the first place. Still, I should have at least articulated myself a little better at the beginning without dropping the F-bomb. Detective says that because DIY didn't commit the crime and took accountability for her actions, she deserves a second chance and earned her way back into his server. This statement is false. As we discussed previously, she very obviously did not take accountability for her actions. When she was called out for her behavior, she lashed out against Detective and his friends. This is not taking accountability. Because of this, the only thing I can think of Detective referring to is her taking accountability after she burnt all of her bridges. Which, if DIY wanted to apologize and make amends for her wrongs, then Detective can do whatever he wants with her. In private. If this situation is to be believed, under no circumstances should she have been allowed to rejoin his public server. It is debatable, if not already blatantly obvious, that she should not be allowed to run her own server, let alone take part in a community that Detective knows has minors in it. Regardless of whatever reason she had to keep her there, she allegedly, knowingly put people in danger. That is something you do not come back from. Period. Because this decision was premeditated, I asked why he did not consult his mod team about something so serious. He then told me that he asked some of his friends, so the decision wasn't entirely his own. I believed that as a mod and as a friend, I should at least have a say or some idea on what goes on in the server. If it is true that Detective consulted his friends, some of which may also be on the moderation team for his Discord server, and they told him that it was a good idea to bring her back into his public server, they are not very reliable sources in my opinion. If any of these friends are mods for his server, I would also argue that they are ineffective at their jobs. Their number one priority should be to keep people safe, not handing out second chances. Considering these people would need insight into the situation to even make an informed decision, I find it highly improbable that they did not know the stakes for this. Throughout this conversation, Detective also begins to contradict himself, not only making me confused, but changing the story as he goes without giving me a clear set of events. When I tell Detective she needs to get better offline, he then refers to her familial commitments as to why she needs to be a part of his community. Yet with these commitments, she believed in her ability to babysit a pedophile. With the language detective uses in these messages, I get suspicious that he doesn't know the full extent of the story. Before proceeding, I ask if he actually knows everything that happened. He confidently tells me he knows everything except for the reason why she kept her there. Detective says that if nobody feels threatened and she isn't going to make that mistake again, nothing is preventing him from giving her a chance at redemption. This is a horrifically construed perspective to have. The reason why nobody feels threatened is A. Almost nobody in that server actually knows what DIY allegedly did because Detective and his friend group decided they wanted to keep her anonymous. Had I not been lucky enough to sit in on that mod call when I did, if Detective hadn't been in that call, if he decided not to tell me what was going on, I would be completely in the dark about the situation. She would still be in that server at this very moment, and no one, except for Detective, DIY, and their friends, would actually know what happened. And B. As stated, to my knowledge, most of the people who do know about DIY are people who were her friends before all this or stayed her friends throughout this entire time. They are inherently biased parties and would not have felt any danger regardless if she was going to do anything. Truthfully, Detective doesn't actually know if anybody would feel threatened because I cannot stress this enough. Nobody knows who DIY is. He did not disclose what happened in his server in any way. He did not talk to anybody he didn't consider a close friend. Nobody would have had the opportunity to object because, whether a deliberate decision or not, he and his friends made sure that nobody would be able to. Again, the only reason we're here right now is because I got unbelievably lucky. Even with the live stream he didn't go public with any names. I do not understand why he thinks DIY is important enough to be addressed publicly, not once, but twice, yet still not important enough to be called out by name. Another contradiction to the list. Anytime I suggested saying names, the first defense was, we're going to start a war. Then why do a live stream? According to Detective, she was spreading rumors about his friends and associates. You cannot broadcast only half the story, especially when it comes to something as serious as this. There are people who could have gotten seriously hurt, yet the only thing these people care about is how this quote drama is going to affect them. They do not understand that this is beyond childish rumors. No matter how I tried to communicate this, Detective would not budge on his position. This entire situation was extremely avoidable if at any point somebody did anything impactful. All that stream did was gas the flames to a situation that really could have been handled privately if it truly had to be. The actions of these people almost directly contradict the things that they are saying. That stream served no purpose except to drag out a conflict that could have been easily resolved. Block and report DIY and move on. But because these people are so immature, I need to tell them, maybe inviting someone who you think harbored a pedophile in their Discord server is a bad idea, actually. I feel like this concept isn't hard to grasp. Still, here I am a year later, having to make a video about this. Detective says, quote, I knew that she wouldn't ever make that kind of mistake again. But at the same time, according to him, she's under watch by himself and the admin. He later adds that if he felt safety was at risk, I would have never invited her back. Why would the detective need to have her be on watch if she wasn't going to make that mistake again? If he was so confident in her, why bother with looking out for her potential mess-ups? Seems like a waste of time and resources to me, but I'm just a messenger. If Detective thought she wasn't going to make that mistake again, he could have kept her in private chats. We talked for hours, and at no point did he provide a sufficient answer as to why she needed to be brought back into his public server. Detective thinks that because the public he's connected to, his server, DIY's server, and his friends, has forgiven what she's done, that passes as a good enough representation of the public in general. At the same time as he says this, he's also not a big-time YouTuber with a massive following, which, wow dude, way to avoid answering the question, want a trophy for your astute observation? But also, by the same logic, reporting her would have caused a massive war. So to summarize, Detective's circle of connection is so large that they count as a passable representation of the general public's opinion, and by being responsible adults in reporting DIY, they would cause a war. Still, at the same time, he knows his following isn't actually sizable at all. He's thinking this way because he isn't actually thinking about anyone else except for the people who had contact with DIY at the time. It doesn't matter that there are people who could have been legitimately victimized because these people picked drama over common sense. This group has entangled their personal issues with an actual serious problem. Detective was so focused on how it would affect him and his friend group, he neglected to actually try and solve the issue maturely. Now here we are, even with all of Detective's avoidance of publicizing what happened, it still made it out anyway. All of this childishness led us right back to where we began. At this point, I start to pick up on a lot of these contradictions, and yet again I ask if there's a part of the story that Detective is withholding. He tells me that DIY was friends with the pedophile before she found out anything. I try to insinuate that I don't care, and he just keeps going with making excuses for her. I ask if DIY knew that they were a predator when Detective and his associates told her to kick them. He did not answer this question directly and brought up the person who told him everything instead. I should have pushed harder on this, but at this point I was so fed up and I really just wanted to get the details in the conversation instead of fooling around with whatever non-useful information Detective would give me. I asked if he was a first-hand account of the story. He claims that when he was first told, the predator was already removed. While I was looking for a yes or no answer here, this is very imperative information. By this point, I have asked at least twice if he had given me all of the details, and just now he has told me that he didn't even have a role in any of this until after it was over. This puts the entire story into a different context. Instead of it being, we told her to get rid of the predator and she didn't, it becomes, we got mad at her when we found out that she didn't get rid of the predator until recently. Both are valid reasons to be upset, but I don't understand why Detective didn't tell me the full context of what happened up to this point. I ask if he has a trustworthy first-hand account of the story. He responds that he doesn't anymore. I asked who told him about the predator, how they found out, and if they were a known offender. He says that when he found out about them, she released an apology video for her actions. I finally asked why he made both a YouTube post and a stream addressing everything. He said because he thought it was the right thing to do. When I asked him what made him think that reporting DIY would start a war, of course his answer was his friend group. Honestly, I should have seen that one coming. He admits that his friend group's views were completely skewed, then adding that he knew not everyone was going to respect his decision to make amends with DIY. I called this out again and asked why bring her in his server. He says that he felt he could trust us with her. Somehow, we the people need to be found trustworthy enough to be with DIY, not DIY needing to be trusted enough to be around everybody else. Here's when everything kind of falls apart. After going back and forth for about 2 hours, one of Detective's friends told him that DIY didn't actually have any evidence against the predator. Here's where we get our first actual deviations with these stories, at least to my understanding. Either 1. Detective and his friends attacked DIY without giving her any time to think, and she had no clue what was going on because she already banned them. Or 2. When she was asked about the predator, she decided not to ask for any information or look for any information and refused to get rid of them, instead actively choosing to be negligent. I ask more questions again, trying to get any semblance of a coherent series of events. Detective tells me that everybody jumped her without giving any proof until the predator released the confession video. She knew of the accusations and wanted to get evidence before making a decision. This confuses me even further, because if this story was the case, then nobody's actions line up with what happened. There's no reason for everybody to be so upset with each other when nobody gave any proof and the predator was banned. So, I continued pressing for answers. I have the messages on screen for a more detailed recounting of events. To make a long story short, Pink told DIY about the predator, and then later Lime shared the info with Detective's friends in their group chat. Now he's finally decided to give me the full story up to this point. I have asked repeatedly for him to explain what happened and why he let DIY back. Instead of talking to me like a normal person, he immediately went to appeal to my emotions. This is why I'm not completely positive that DIY did anything wrong in the first place. But at the same time, while the story keeps changing, the actions do not. This causes a disconnect between what could have happened and how people responded. At this point, I have come up with a few different possibilities given the information that I have. 1. Pink informed DIY that there was a pedophile in her server. DIY asked for evidence / where to find proof. Pink did not provide any and did not tell her how to get any. DIY waited until she got enough evidence and banned the predator 2 months after she was told. Sometime after this person was removed, Lime decided to tell Detective and his friends about the situation. They all got mad at DIY, and instead of explaining herself, she went on to spread rumors about people. This is the most charitable story I can come up with. Should this story be the case, Detective owes DIY a public apology for falsely blaming DIY for how the situation was handled. If this is to be believed, she did everything in her power to handle the situation. Even without naming her in that livestream, he led people to believe that she behaved irresponsibly. If it was important enough for him to make that stream public, he can make this apology public too. I also don't have a problem with apologizing to DIY if this does turn out to be true. If she or any other primary sources come out to confirm anything, I will gladly edit and update this video to the best of my ability. That being said, do I believe this? No, absolutely not. If DIY was not given proof or did not find any proof, why just now did we get this information from a third party? Why was it that the reason she gave for keeping the predator in her server was keeping people safe? Why didn't she just say that she didn't have any evidence? Why is it that she began attacking people, Lime specifically, instead of just explaining herself? If this situation is anything to go by, at the very least, Detective would have listened to her story. This is the only deviation in her explanation that I have caught at the very least. It does not make sense for this to have been brought up so late after everything. It just doesn't add up. 2. Pink told DIY about the predator. DIY didn't ask for any evidence / couldn't find any and waited to ban the predator. Lime found out and told his group chat with Detective and his friends. They got mad at her and she lashed out against them. This is also a charitable interpretation. I feel like it's still grossly negligent to not ask for any evidence at any point within the 2-month period the predator was in the server. I also doubt it was hard to find evidence as, again, the predator admitted to their crimes sometime after those 2 months apparently. Pink needed to be getting her info from somewhere, so it's unlikely that evidence didn't exist. It also makes sense as to why people were mad at her afterwards. Instead of this being a random attack, it would be more like criticism for her handling of the situation. This outcome still paints DIY as dangerously negligent and untrustworthy, to run a server at least, without being completely innocent or malicious. I do think it's probably the most likely scenario I could think of. 3. Pink told DIY about the predator and provided enough evidence, or DIY just trusted what Pink told her. She then kept the predator in her server anyway to keep an eye on them. She decided for one reason or another that they weren't worth keeping around and banned them. Lime told his group chat what happened, and they all went after DIY. This is the most harsh read of the conflict with the information that I have. It answers a couple of big questions. Why didn't DIY say she wasn't given any evidence? Because she actually did get evidence, or she felt she didn't need any. Why was everyone mad at her? Because she knowingly didn't remove them. Why was Lime specifically the target of her anger? Because he's the one who started warning people about what she did. Of course, that last reason can be applied to every explanation, but at least from my perspective, I would be more mad at my friends for actually listening to someone else instead of giving me a chance to explain myself. I would mostly be mad at Lime if I knew I was wrong and I didn't want anybody else to know about it. This is more in line with the original events I was told. This goes directly against the idea that she didn't have any evidence. However, because I don't really have a proper timeline of events and nobody in this group has the ability to communicate properly, it's not entirely impossible for her to have come across some evidence later on while the predator was still in the server and still waited to do anything about it. I do not know DIY, so I cannot for sure say that she was intentionally being malicious. This is just another possible reading of the way things could have went. The point of all this to say that because Detective was so determined on keeping the details of this story undisclosed, he leaves what actually happened up to interpretation. Instead of coming clean about everything, we have to guess about what actually went down. Again, this could have been avoided by being open in that live stream or just not making it at all. At the end of the day, it is not my job to speculate on what could have happened between these people. I am not trying to expose anyone because I quite frankly do not have the evidence to do so. All of this is way out of my zone of expertise, and I have no desire to cover this. I am confident enough to say that I do think DIY is at least guilty of extreme negligence, based on the way Detective admits that it is a bad idea to have her in public spaces. Again, if she didn't do anything wrong, why say that she can't be in public? But in reality, it really doesn't matter what I think at this point. In the messages you've seen, Detective has said himself that DIY did mess up badly, and that confirmation is enough for me to push forward with the making of this video. The purpose of those last 2 sections was to show that I did try everything in my power to settle this privately. I did not want to incite more problems. It was also to prove what happens when only half of the story is given. In a situation like this, where someone could have gotten in serious trouble, you don't get the luxury of deciding what not to share. It is important to share as much information as reasonably possible so people can make informed decisions. If anyone has any problems with the information I have presented in this video, please understand that I got it all from Detective. If there is an issue, it probably came from him. I said this before, but if any first-hand account has more information they believe needs to be released and added to this video, feel free to contact me via Blue Sky or Evidence. I will be sure to release an edit to this video to try and set the record straight if I find it to be relevant enough. Please do not send anyone mentioned in this video any hate or harassment. This video is meant to be a general PSA for what these communities have been up to. The only reason this video even exists is because Detective lied to me. As you're seeing on the screen, at the end of the conversation, Detective is completely understanding of the fact that having DIY in his streams is a bad idea. So tell me why. Literally, the next Saturday, DIY is in his stream as a guest. We sat around for almost 3 hours, going back and forth, with him eventually conceding his point, not once, but twice. Had it ended that way, I would not be here right now, because I did my part to contain the damage. But obviously, I wasted my time, because here we are anyway, with him playing Uno with her publicly on a Saturday evening. As I said, I don't want to cause anybody any more stress, but I would be a hypocrite if I just sat all this information. I don't feel comfortable knowing this, while the rest of the public don't. Detective will continue to push the boundaries if I, at the very least, don't bring attention to this behavior. Putting people at risk for the sake of your feelings is beyond irresponsible, and I really can't let that slide. I gave him a chance to correct his mistake, but he is so wrapped up in the idea of, can I reform DIY, instead of asking the question of, should I bother the public with reforming DIY? I am here to say that if it comes down to their friends or the safety of their communities, these people will pick their friends. They will compromise your safety for the sake of making their friends feel more comfortable. I have yet to mention the fact that Detective didn't even remove DIY from his server. DIY left the server of her own accord. Detective knew it was risky, but did he ask anyone who wouldn't say no to him? Of course not. These people cannot keep getting away with only publicizing the information that makes them look good. They can't get away with putting people, children in this case, at risk. They can't get away with lying about the actions they're taking to keep people safe. They can't get away without any consequences for their actions. At this point in time, if you come across DIY or Detective, please be wary of joining their communities. In Detective's case, he has actively shown that, even if he knows his friends have the potential to be dangerous, if he deems the crime to be insignificant enough and he believes the person is remorseful, he is willing to hand out second chances with barely a passing thought about how it will affect others. For the sake of your safety, if you gain nothing else from this video, please take this into consideration. Please stay safe out there, everyone, and thank you for listening.